Imagine you're standing face to face with a ghost.
Oh, boy.
Right. You're in a pitch black room in a foreign country, and your heart is just pounding against your ribs.
Pure panic.
Exactly. Your pure primal survival instincts kick in. Your brain is just screaming at you to do something, to defend yourself, to survive.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, fight or flight. And what actually comes out of your mouth? You look at this ghost standing in the dark and you say, "Hello, my name is, I am a student. This is my first semester."
That is just, it is the ultimate neurobiological short circuit.
It really is. And today we are looking at exactly why human brains completely misfire like that when we try to navigate the agonizing, messy, and honestly sometimes hilarious process of learning a new language.
It's a messy process, yeah.
So messy. We are pulling from an incredible source today for this deep dive. It's a transcript of a stand-up comedy performance, actually.
Which is a great source, honestly.
Yeah, it's by a Vietnamese comedian from the group Saigon To. And we aren't just looking at this to laugh at the jokes, though they are really funny.
Right.
As I read through these stories, I realized this comedian isn't just, telling funny anecdotes. He is acting as this sort of accidental linguist.
Oh, absolutely. Like an armchair sociologist.
Yes. He's mapping out one of the most complex cognitive hurdles that humans face.
He really is providing this raw, completely unfiltered data set on human cognition under extreme linguistic stress.
That's a great way to put it.
Because, we spend so much time looking at clinical studies of language acquisition.
Right, the boring stuff.
Exactly, the textbooks. But this source material gives us the reality of the streets, the dorm rooms, and the corporate offices.
The real world.
Yeah, it captures the friction between what a human being desperately wants to express and the highly inadequate tools they currently possess to express it.
And the engine driving this entire narrative, the through line we're going to trace today, is the search for the ultimate JFAP.
Yeah. JFAP, right.
Yeah, that is the Vietnamese term for solution.
A very important concept here.
Exactly. Throughout his whole journey, going from this clueless English teacher to a really desperate learner, the speaker is constantly hunting for this elusive JFAP.
He's always looking for the fix.
Right, to overcome the language barrier. So we're going to examine the solutions we all instinctively try.
Like literal translation.
Yep, literal translation, textbook memorization, forcing immersion, building academic armor. And we'll break down the actual neurology and sociology of why almost every single one of these engineered solutions just fails spectacularly.
They really do. We are going to establish the fundamental difference between treating language as an academic performance to be judged versus treating language as a dynamic tool for human connection.
Because most of the time, the JFAP we choose actively destroys the connection we are trying to build.
It does. It absolutely does.
So let's get right into the trenches here.
Let's do it.
Before the speaker in our source material was a student trying to learn English, he was actually teaching English online to absolute beginners.
Which is a wild place to start.
Oh, totally. And this is where we see the very first, the most instinctual JFAP that any human being uses when they encounter a new language.
Literal translation.
Literal translation, yeah. The speaker talks about teaching people who are just struggling to grasp the alphabet.
Right, true beginners.
And the way their brains process foreign vocabulary is just fascinating. He asks his students to identify beefsteak.
Okay.
Now, in Vietnamese, the term is bo bit.
Oh, bit T, right?
Yeah, so bo means cow, and bit T is just a phonetic loan word for beefsteak. It just sounds like beefsteak.
Yeah, it's borrowed directly.
But when these beginners try to pull the English word out of their memory, they confidently pronounce it as lipstick.
Lipstick. That is just amazing.
Right, lipstick.
But, the human brain is an aggressive pattern-matching machine.
How so? Like, how do you get lipstick from beefsteak?
Well, when you encounter a foreign language, your brain doesn't actually have the neural pathways to categorize those new phonemes.
The sounds, you mean?
Right, the distinct acoustic sounds of that specific language.
Yeah.
So it panics. It desperately searches its existing native database for the closest auditory match.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so they hear beefsteak. It gets filtered through Vietnamese phonological rules into bit tat.
Okay.
And then when they're forced to produce an English word that sounds vaguely like that, their brain just grabs lipstick.
So they logically assume that lipstick translates to a piece of cow.
Exactly, because that's the only reference point they have.
The speaker even notes that by this beginner logic, if you have chicken steak, they are walking around thinking about chicken lipstick.
Chicken lipstick, that's hilarious.
It's so funny, but hold on, I have to push back a little on this idea that literal translation is always a terrible jife.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because, well, when I traveled to Mexico a few years ago, I didn't speak a word of Spanish.
Yeah.
I used literal word-for-word translation from my phone. I pointed at a menu, translated the nouns directly, and you know what? It worked perfectly fine.
You got your food.
I got my food, no problems. So when does literal translation actually break down and become culturally dangerous?
That's a fair point.
Mm.
It works for transactional nouns.
Okay.
Pointing at a physical object and swapping the label, saying agua instead of water, it's a one-to-one exchange.
Makes sense.
Where literal translation collapses is when you move from transactional vocabulary to relational vocabulary.
Relational vocabulary?
Yeah. Language is not just a direct word-for-word cipher. It is the crystallized history, the social hierarchy, and the cultural philosophy of a people.
Oh, wow. Give me an example of that from the source, because the comedian tells a story that perfectly illustrates this, I think.
Yeah, he does.
He talks about the English acronym VIP.
Very important person.
Very important person, exactly. We use it constantly. But his beginner students naturally translated it in their heads as very important people.
Right. Plural.
Which seems like the most harmless slip in the world, right? People instead of person.
It seems harmless, but it structurally corrupts their entire grammatical foundation.
Really? How so?
Well, if a student begins conceptualizing a single VIP as a plural entity because of a slight translation error in their native logic, it scrambles their understanding of subject-verb agreement down the line.
Oh, because they'll think VIP takes a plural verb.
Exactly. They will say the VIP are here instead of the VIP is here.
Okay, that makes total sense. And it gets even more creative when they try to build new words.
Yes, the vocabulary synthesis.
Yeah, the speaker asks the student, what is a lemon in English? And the student correctly answers, lemon.
Simple enough.
Right. Then he asks, what is a watermelon? Now, in Vietnamese, watermelon is du ho.
Du ho, okay.
The student has never heard the English word watermelon, but their brain goes into overdrive.
They're trying to solve the puzzle.
Exactly. They know a watermelon is a fruit full of water. They know the word for lemon, so they combine them and confidently guess that a watermelon must be called a water lemon.
A water lemon. I absolutely love this example.
It's so logical.
It is, because it demonstrates a concept called morphological productivity.
Morphological productivity.
Right. The student's jeffop to an unknown vocabulary word is to synthesize a brand new one using the governing logic of Vietnamese compound words.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, in Vietnamese, descriptive nouns are often stacked logically to create new meanings.
It's just like stacking blocks.
Exactly. The student is highly creative, highly analytical, and structurally, they're doing exactly what their native operating system trained them to do.
It's like trying to run a modern iOS app on a Windows 95 computer.
That is a perfect analogy.
The hardware, the human mouth and vocal cords works fine. But the operating system, the underlying syntax and logic they are trying to run the code through, it just fundamentally rejects it.
You get a system crash.
Total system crash. And the biggest system crash in the source material actually comes down to cultural translation. Specifically pronouns.
Oh, pronouns. Pronouns are the true battleground of cultural translation.
Definitely.
Especially between English and Vietnamese.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, English pronouns are remarkably democratized. I, you, he, she, they.
They're flat.
Exactly. They are flat. They do not encode hierarchy. They do not encode age. And they do not encode social standing.
Right, like if I want to tell someone I love them, the phrase, I love you, is universal applicable.
Completely universal.
A teenager can say it, a grandparent can say it, a CEO can say it to their spouse. It's just a flat utility tool.
But Vietnamese does not have that flatness.
No.
Not at all. The Vietnamese pronoun system requires the speaker to constantly, actively negotiate their social position relative to the listener.
Constantly.
Yes. You cannot even say I or you without first calculating who is older, who is more respected, or who is the subordinate in the relationship.
Man, the speaker highlights this perfectly. He was watching an English movie where an older man confesses his love to a much younger woman.
Okay.
The English dialogue is just, I love you. And the speaker pauses the movie and thinks, how on earth do I translate this into Vietnamese?
It's a real dilemma.
Because if you translate it directly based on their visual ages, you have to use familial terms.
Right, terms for relatives.
Yeah. You would end up translating it to something that sounds like Grandpa loves you or Uncle loves you,
Oh, wow.
which in a romantic movie sounds incredibly creepy.
It really does. And it creates profound cognitive dissonance
For sure.
because the English language allows the characters to bypass their age difference and speak purely as equals in romance.
They're just two people in love.
Right. But the Vietnamese language forbids that bypass.
Huh.
To translate it, you have to force the characters into a rigid social structure that the original English dialogue deliberately ignored.
That is fascinating.
This is exactly why the literal translation JFAP fails. You aren't just swapping vocabulary. You're forcing a speaker to adopt an entirely new social identity.
And the friction goes both ways, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
The speaker mentions a foreigner at his language center who was trying to learn Vietnamese and was just losing his mind over the past tense.
I can imagine.
Think about how complex English timekeeping is. We have irregular verbs, past participles, I went, I had gone, I have been going.
It's a very chronologically obsessed language.
English is obsessed with the exact sequence of events. So this foreigner is demanding to know, how do I conjugate this verb into the past tense?
He wants the rules.
He wants the formula, and the speaker just looks at him and says, oh, you just dropped the word udden in front of the verb.
Just one word.
That's the JFOP. One word, no conjugation, and the foreigner is just stunned.
Well, because it shatters the foreigner's preconceived framework of how time must be expressed.
That's right.
The English speaker demands structural complexity because their native language uses grammar to map time.
Yeah, the verb itself has to change shape.
Exactly. But Vietnamese uses context markers, allowing the verb itself to remain completely unchanged.
It's so efficient.
It is. Neither system is objectively better, but if your GFAP is to demand that the foreign language conform to your native architecture, you are just going to live in a state of permanent frustration.
You're going to have a bad time. So if literal translation is a disastrous solution, if it leads to water lemons and romantic uncles, what happens when a learner realizes this and actively seeks out better methodologies?
They look for the shortcuts.
They do. The speaker hits this exact wall. He realizes his English is terrible and he needs a new GFAP. And his motivation for doing this is completely universal.
The dual engines of human ambition, romance and economics.
Exactly. Love and money. He wanted to impress a girl. He pulled out the classic basic phrase, "You are very beautiful," and it failed miserably.
It usually does when it's clunky.
It was so clunky, it lacked charm, and she was not impressed at all. Furthermore, he wanted to be an MC, a master of ceremonies, and he knew that bilingual MCs command a significantly higher salary in Vietnam.
So he's highly motivated.
He is highly motivated. And this is the phase where learners become incredibly susceptible to, life hacks.
Oh, the life hacks.
Yeah,
Yes.
they want a shortcut.
They seek out methodologies that promise fluency without the agonizing friction of actual human communication.
Which brings us to the first shortcut he tries. Solution number 1, the book method.
Okay.
A well-meaning friend gives him this incredibly common piece of advice. The friend says, just read English books. Don't worry if you don't know every single word. Just look for the keywords and use the context to figure out the rest.
I have heard that so many times.
Right. I have absolutely been given this advice. It sounds incredibly logical. Why does it fail so hard?
Well, it's a staple of language pedagogy aimed at building a tolerance for ambiguity.
Being okay with not knowing everything?
Right. The problem is that it completely ignores the mathematical reality of lexical coverage.
Lexical coverage. What is that?
Reading comprehension relies on two distinct cognitive mechanisms: top-down processing and bottom-up processing.
Okay, lay it on me.
Top-down processing is using your general knowledge of the world, or the story, to guess what is happening. Bottom-up processing is the brutal mechanical decoding of the actual letters and words on the page.
So the keyword method is relying heavily on top-down processing. It's asking you to guess.
Precisely. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
Research in applied linguistics suggests that in order to successfully use context to guess the meaning of an unknown word, you need to already understand about 95 to 98% of the surrounding words on that page.
95%.
Yes, if a true beginner opens a novel and only knows 50% of the words, there is no context. The context is built out of the very words they don't understand.
Wow. The speaker realizes this instantly, actually. He goes to the bookstore, opens an English book, and thinks, if I don't understand the keywords themselves, I can't understand the context.
He figured it out pretty fast.
It's like looking at a jigsaw puzzle where 80% of the pieces are missing and someone tells you to just look at the big picture.
There is no big picture.
There's no big picture.
Mm.
The friend gave him a strategy that required a massive foundational vocabulary he simply didn't possess.
The GFAP is fundamentally mathematically unsound for his proficiency level.
So books are out. He pivots to the next logical shortcut. Immersion through cinema.
Ah, the classic movie method.
The logic here is that you watch a movie in English and you passively absorb the vocabulary while being entertained. It's the dream, right? Learn while you relax.
It sounds perfect in theory.
So he puts on the epic movie The Last Samurai.
A sweeping narrative with intense emotional stakes.
Oh, it's so good. He puts it on, and the movie is so engaging that he gets completely sucked into the world. By the time the credits roll 2.5 hours later, he realizes he hasn't learned a single syllable of English.
Not one word.
Not one word. He was so absorbed in Tom Cruise and the samurai battles that his brain entirely bypassed the linguistic exercise.
Because it wasn't necessary to enjoy the film.
Right. But here is where the speaker's logic is so funny and so revealing.
Yeah.
He diagnoses the problem. He says, okay, the issue wasn't the method. The issue was that the movie was too good.
Too distracting.
Too distracting. I need to watch a terrible movie, a 1-star rated movie, so I won't care about the plot, and I can focus 100% of my brain power on the English vocabulary.
It is a brilliant, highly analytical hypothesis that completely misunderstands how the human brain allocates energy.
Seriously. So he puts on the 1-star movie, and what happens? He falls fast asleep in 15 minutes.
Of course he does.
Why? Why does our brain just shut down when we try to do this? I've done this exact thing trying to learn how to code on YouTube. I put on a dry, boring tutorial, feeling very disciplined, and I am unconscious in 10 minutes.
Because the brain is an incredibly stingy organ.
Stingy.
Very stingy. It is constantly calculating the return on investment for cognitive calorie expenditure.
Okay.
When you watch a great movie like The Last Samurai, your brain is receiving massive hits of narrative dopamine. It is being rewarded for paying attention.
Right, it feels good.
But it doesn't want to expend the agonizing cognitive effort required to decode foreign syntax when it can just read the subtitles or follow the visual action to get that dopamine.
It takes the path of least resistance to get the reward.
Exactly. Now, when you remove the entertainment value, when you put on the 1-star movie or the boring coding tutorial, the brain does a quick calculation.
It runs the numbers.
It runs the numbers and recognizes that it's receiving absolutely zero narrative reward, zero dopamine, and zero immediate survival value. Yet, it is being asked to perform highly strenuous foreign language processing. Facing high cognitive strain with zero motivation, it chooses the ultimate path of least resistance. It powers down.
It just goes to sleep?
Yes. Learning a language requires active, negotiated interaction. Passive reception is an illusion of competence. We confuse the ease of consuming content with the mastery of a skill.
That is a brutal truth.
Yeah.
Passive reception is an illusion of competence.
It really is.
So passive learning fails. The speaker decides he needs actual human interaction. He moves to the next GFAP, local English centers.
A classroom.
He enrolls in a class in Vietnam, but he immediately encounters the reality of institutional language learning. He splits his classmates into 2 groups.
Okay, what are the groups?
The first group are the people who go to an English class and simply refuse to speak English.
They're just silent.
Yeah, they are too paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. But the second group, the ones who do speak, are almost worse. He runs into people who are stuck in an endless, pre-programmed robotic loop.
Ah, the procedural communicators.
He meets a classmate, and the classmate immediately fires off the script. Hello? How are you? I am good. And you?
Like a robot.
Exactly. And the speaker tries to be dynamic. He says, wait, you just moved here. Let's talk about that. How was the move?
He tries to have a real conversation.
Right. And the classmate just stares at him, panics, and retreats right back into the script.
This exposes the catastrophic failure of the institutional GFAP.
Yeah.
The English Center is teaching the performance of conversation, not the mechanics of communication.
Because that's a great distinction.
They are teaching students to memorize declarative scripts. But authentic human interaction is not scripted. It is highly dynamic and unpredictable.
You never know what the other person is going to say.
Exactly. When the speaker tries to break the script and ask a genuine question, the classmate's system crashes because they haven't been taught how to build a sentence, only how to recite one.
Okay, so if isolated local methods fail, what is left?
The nuclear option.
The nuclear option. The speaker decides he has to go nuclear. He opts for the most extreme, highly romanticized JFAP available to any language learner. Total geographical immersion.
The Holy Grail.
He packs his bags, leaves Vietnam, and flies to the Philippines for a 2-month, 12-hour-a-day intensive English boot camp.
That is intense.
Super intense. The premise is that if you entirely remove the safety net of your native language, you will be forced to adapt or drown.
Sink or swim.
Exactly. But the source material brilliantly explores what actually happens when the academic theory of immersion collides with the chaotic unpredictability of real human beings.
Because immersion assumes you'll be in this perfect linguistic environment.
Right, like everyone around you is an English professor.
But the reality is that you are immersed in a melting pot of other flawed, panicking communicators.
The chaos in his dorm room is magnificent. He is thrown into a room with international roommates, and we get to see how different cultures approach the exact same linguistic deficit.
This is where it gets really sociologically interesting.
It does. He talks about his Korean roommate first. He describes this guy as incredibly exuberant, highly casual, and completely devoid of the fear of making mistakes.
Zero fear.
Zero fear. The Korean roommate wakes up, throws open the door, and just fires off words like a machine gun. Good morning, coffee, how are you? Hello, I'm good.
He's just throwing vocabulary at the wall.
Yeah. The grammar is non-existent, the structure makes no sense, but the energy is completely undeniable.
Linguistically speaking, the Korean roommate has a massive advantage here.
How so?
He has an incredibly low affective filter.
Effective filter.
Yeah, in language acquisition theory, the affective filter is the emotional barrier that prevents learning. Anxiety, fear of embarrassment, self-consciousness, these raise the filter and block language production.
Oh, I see.
The Korean roommate's filter is 0. He values the speed of connection over the accuracy of the grammar.
The climax of this guy's communication style is pure comedy. One day, the Korean roommate comes up to the speaker, casually walking around the room, and cheerfully announces in English, "I have a hole in my pants."
That is amazing.
He didn't care about saving face at all. He just identified a structural flaw in his trousers and announced it to the room.
Just putting it out there.
But what makes this brilliant is the contrast with the other roommate, because sitting in that exact same room is the Japanese roommate.
A vastly different cultural approach to problem solving and communication.
Completely opposite. While the Korean roommate is cheerfully parading around with a hole in his pants, the Japanese roommate reacts with intense, analytical seriousness.
Oh boy.
The speaker notes that the Japanese roommate literally spends 30 minutes sitting down with the Korean guy, seriously investigating why and how the hole got there.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. What happened? Where did this originate? Did you snag it on a nail? It turns into a full forensic investigation over torn fabric.
This is a beautiful micro-study in how high-context and low-context cultures navigate a shared imperfect second language.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, the Korean roommate's JFAC to the situation was immediate, uninhibited vocalization. It is a surface-level observation.
Just stating the facts.
Right. The Japanese roommate, coming from a culture that often values deep underlying context and root cause analysis, applies that cultural framework to the situation.
So he wants to know the why.
Exactly. When these differing cognitive styles are forced to communicate using the clunky tools of beginner English, the friction is both absurd and deeply educational.
It's so funny. But the absolute peak of this Philippines trip, the moment where the rubber truly meets the road regarding the theory of immersion, is the ghost story.
The ghost story. This is where the neurology really shines.
I want to spend some time on this because the psychology here is wild. Let me set the scene exactly as the comedian describes it.
Set the scene.
The speaker is in this foreign country. It is the middle of the night. He wakes up because the room is freezing. He gets out of bed to turn off the air conditioning.
Okay.
As he reaches the AC unit, he turns around, looks at the main door of the room, and sees a strange figure standing there. A ghost, staring right at him with 2 eyes in the dark.
The primal fear response is instantly activated.
He is absolutely terrified, but he tries to stay rational. He slowly, calmly walks back to his bed, climbs in, and pulls the blanket over his head.
Hiding like a kid.
Yep. And under that blanket, in the pitch black, his brain starts racing. He remembers advice from his friends back in Vietnam. If you see a ghost, you have to be tough. You have to assert yourself. Tell it you are just a Vietnamese student here to study and to leave you alone.
He attempts to use a cultural superstition as a psychological defense mechanism.
Right. But then a horrifying realization hits him under the blanket. He is in the Philippines. This is a Filipino ghost.
Oh, no.
He realizes that if he speaks Vietnamese to the ghost won't understand a word he's saying, and the situation might escalate because of the miscommunication.
He's worried about a language barrier with an apparition.
Yes. So, lying in the dark, terrified out of his mind, he decides the ultimate survival GFAP is that he must speak to the ghost in English.
And this is where the neurobiology takes over. What does his brain actually produce in this moment of pure, unadulterated terror?
It produces the only thing it has completely mastered. Facing what he believes is a supernatural threat, the speaker recites his robotic beginner ESL class introduction.
Oh my gosh.
He says to the ghost, "Hello, my name is, I am a student. This is my first semester. We have computer studies."
This is a profound demonstration of how the brain allocates resources under stress.
Break that down for us, because it's so funny, but it makes sense.
When the amygdala detects a threat, like a ghost, it triggers a massive flood of adrenaline and cortisol.
The panic juices.
Right, the panic juices. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for complex, creative thought, nuance, and constructing dynamic foreign sentences, essentially shuts down.
It just goes offline.
It goes entirely offline.
Yeah.
The brain deems it too slow, too computationally expensive for a survival situation.
Wow.
Instead, it delegates control to the basal ganglia, relying entirely on deeply ingrained procedural memory.
The grooves that have been carved the deepest.
Precisely. Because he had drilled that basic robotic introduction over and over again in those failed English center classes back in Vietnam, it was the only neural pathway strong enough to survive the panic response.
It was hardwired.
His creative linguistic ability completely vanished. The solution to terror was treating the ghost like an ESL teacher on the first day of class.
But wait, I have a major question for you here.
Sure, ask away.
If the ultimate result of total immersion is that your brain panics and reverts to reciting a textbook intro to a ghost in the dark, why does everyone say true immersion works?
That's a good question.
Why is it considered the holy grail of language learning if it just causes our prefrontal cortex to shut down in high-stress situations?
That is the exact paradox of immersion. It works because of the stress, not in spite of it.
Oh, really?
Think about it. In a classroom environment, the stakes are entirely academic. If you fail to speak English, you get a bad grade. Your survival is not threatened.
You just go home.
Right. In total geographical immersion, the stakes shift from academic to biological and social survival. If you fail to speak English in the Philippines, you don't eat, you can't navigate the bus system, and you can't negotiate with a ghost.
Right.
While acute panic might cause a temporary regression to scripts, the sustained low-level stress of immersion forces the brain to recognize the language not as abstract information to be memorized, but as vital data for navigating reality.
It becomes a tool for survival.
It breaks the reliance on native translation and forces you to map foreign words directly to physical actions and immediate needs.
It forces the brain to take the language seriously.
Exactly. It creates organic, undeniable stakes.
Which naturally leads us to ask, what happens when you try to artificially manufacture those stakes? What happens when you try to force that same total immersion in an environment where it inherently does not belong?
This never goes well.
It does not. We move from the dorm room to the corporate office. The speaker returns from the Philippines. His English has significantly improved through all this chaos, and he gets a job at a tech startup back in Vietnam.
Okay, a tech startup.
This is a small team, just him, 4 other Vietnamese colleagues, and a Vietnamese boss. They have great synergy, they chat all day in Vietnamese, the ideas are flowing.
Sounds like a good environment.
It is, but they are developing a tech product aimed at the global market. The boss looks at the situation and decides they need a top-down GFAP to ensure everyone is ready to interact with international clients.
A very common, often misguided corporate objective, the desire to engineer fluency.
So the boss implements the ultimate heavy-handed mandate, English Day.
Oh no.
He decrees that every single Wednesday, the entire office must speak exclusively in English, no exceptions.
Forced immersion.
And to create those survival stakes we just talked about, he introduces a penalty. Anyone caught speaking a single word of Vietnamese will be fined 50,000 Vietnamese dong.
He is attempting to artificially simulate the Philippine immersion environment within the safe confines of a Vietnamese office.
Right.
He believes that by introducing a financial penalty, He is mimicking the biological stakes of true immersion.
And the results are hilariously, predictably disastrous. The speaker describes what happens when Wednesday arrives. This normally chatty, vibrant, highly collaborative office falls into complete and utter silence.
Crickets.
Just crickets. It is described as the strangest, most oppressive atmosphere ever. People are sitting at their desks, heads down, refusing to make eye contact with each other. No one speaks a single word.
That's so sad.
Why? Because the 50,000 dong fine has completely destroyed their psychological safety?
The boss fundamentally misunderstood the nature of language.
How so?
Language, at its core, is a social contract built on shared understanding and efficiency.
Efficiency, yeah.
When you take 5 native Vietnamese speakers who share a highly nuanced, highly efficient mother tongue, and you force them to use a clunky, imperfect second language to communicate with each other, you aren't facilitating communication.
What are you doing?
You're actively obstructing it. You are forcing them to use a butter knife to chop down a tree when they have a chainsaw sitting right next to them.
It's so unnatural. The speaker gives this perfect example of how communication completely broke down. The boss walks into the room.
Okay.
Normally, on a Tuesday, you'd just give a quick nod, a casual Vietnamese greeting, maybe a joke. But because it's English Day, a coworker looks up, freezes, and says in a completely stiff, robotic voice, "Hello, boss. Nice to meet you."
Nice to meet you, to a man he has worked with every single day for months.
Yes. Because that is the only phrase his panicked brain can retrieve that fits the requirement of speaking English to an authority figure.
He has regressed back to the ESL script, just like the ghost story.
Exactly. And it gets worse. Later in the day, the silence in the office is so heavy, so awkward, that one coworker decides he has to break it.
Someone has to speak.
He leans over to the speaker, and you can tell he's trying to initiate normal water cooler chat. But his brain is so constrained by the fear of making a grammar mistake and losing his 50,000 dong that he asks the most textbook, sterile question imaginable.
What does he ask?
He looks at his colleague of several months and asks, "How many people are in your family?"
He reverts to Chapter 1, Page 1 of the language textbook.
Literally.
The context is entirely inappropriate, but the grammar is safe.
And the speaker, feeling the exact same immense pressure, answers like a programmed machine. "There are 3 people in my family, my parents and me."
So robotic.
And then, silence again, the transaction's over, they put their headphones back on and just stare at their screens.
This perfectly illustrates why mandated artificial language environments fail in corporate settings.
They just don't work.
The boss thought the JFAP was to create a penalty for failure. But fear does not breed fluency. Fear breeds silence.
Fear breeds silence. Wow.
The authentic, organic need to communicate was removed. They didn't need to speak English to understand each other. They were only doing it to avoid a fine. Therefore, the language became a barrier, a source of intense anxiety, rather than a bridge for collaboration.
I was thinking about this, and it's exactly like a manager walking into a room of highly skilled engineers and saying, "All right, team, to improve our out-of-the-box thinking, for all of Wednesday, we are only allowed to communicate via interpretive dance."
That is exactly what it is.
What would happen? Would they suddenly become wildly creative dancers? No. Everyone would just sit frozen in their chairs, terrified of wiggling an arm the wrong way and looking foolish in front of their peers.
Right, nobody wants to look stupid.
Instead of fostering creativity, you have completely halted all actual productivity because you force them to use a tool that is highly inappropriate for the environment.
The psychological load of performing the dance outweighs the utility of the message they want to convey.
Yeah.
And eventually, in any high-pressure environment like that, the pressure cooker has to pop.
Which it does spectacularly. The climax of English Day is that the silence and the awkwardness become so unbearable that the boss, the very man who implemented the rule, the architect of this GFAP, cannot take it anymore.
He cracks.
He cracks. He stands up, throws a 50,000 dong note on the table, willingly taking his own fine, and yells in Vietnamese, "Fine yo,"
Which means?
which translates to, "We must go drink," or "We must go party."
I love that.
He breaks his own rule because the fundamental human need for authentic, frictionless connection overpowered the artificial corporate mandate.
The GFAP of forced compliance shattered under the weight of human nature. You cannot legislate organic communication.
You really can't.
Mhm.
So we have seen literal translation fail beginners. We have seen immersion cause panic attacks in front of ghosts. We have seen corporate forced solutions completely silence an office. Where do people turn when all of these fail?
They turn to the institutions.
They turn to academia. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating and, frankly, most insidious parts of the source material: how advanced learners, specifically university English majors, try to solve the fluency problem.
This is the transition from struggling to communicate to struggling to perform.
Yes. Once learners get past the basics, once they aren't worried about saying water, lemon, or lipstick anymore, they adopt a new, highly complex GFAP.
And what is that?
They try to sound as intelligent, complex, and unapproachable as possible. The goal fundamentally shifts. The goal is no longer just to be understood by the listener. The goal is to avoid being looked down upon by their academic peers.
They are building an academic armor. It is a phenomenon deeply rooted in sociolinguistics.
And the primary weapon in this arsenal, as the comedian beautifully points out, is the thesaurus.
The mighty thesaurus.
He jokingly compares the thesaurus to a T-Rex dinosaur, this massive, intimidating, destructive beast that English majors unleash on normal, unsuspecting people.
It's a great visual.
The entire strategy revolves around taking a perfectly good, simple, functional sentence and aggressively replacing every single word with a multisyllabic, obscure synonym.
It is the relentless pursuit of the polysyllabic.
Let me give you the spookers examples because they capture this arrogance perfectly. A normal person wants to express a simple thought. I go to school.
Simple, effective.
It gets the job done. But an English major, armed with their T-Rex thesaurus, looks at that sentence and thinks, that is far too basic. The uneducated masses say, I go to school.
Oh, this snobbery.
So their academic GFAP is to transform it into, I go to the academy to acquire knowledge.
Notice what happens there.
What's happening?
It immediately elevates the speaker's perceived status while simultaneously and intentionally alienating the listener. It creates a hierarchy.
And it gets so much more extreme when applied to basic human functions.
Really?
The speaker jokes about bodily needs. Instead of just saying, I want to pee, the complex academic speaker refuses to sound so vulgar or basic.
So what do they say?
They construct this elaborate labyrinth of words, announcing to the room that they are requesting a journey to the water release room.
Requesting a journey to the water release room.
It's absurd.
It is. But this brings up a crucial concept in linguistics known as hypercorrection.
Hypercorrection, tell me about that.
Why do advanced learners do this? When learners are insecure about their true mastery of a language, or when they are in an environment that constantly judges their proficiency, they overcompensate.
They try too hard.
Exactly. They adopt formal, archaic, or overly complex vocabulary that native speakers rarely, if ever, use in casual conversation.
Like saying acquire knowledge instead of learn.
Right. The JFAP of using massive words is actually a defense mechanism. The subconscious logic is, if I use words you don't understand, you cannot judge my fluency. You can only be intimidated by my vocabulary.
It's hiding behind a wall of syllables. But I have a question about this. Is academia intentionally teaching this? Are universities actively trying to create people who speak like 19th century aristocrats? Or is this just a byproduct of the grading system?
It is largely a byproduct of how we test language.
How so?
We test for vocabulary breadth and grammatical complexity. If a student says, I go to school, a grader might give them a C because it doesn't demonstrate advanced vocabulary.
But it's correct.
It is. But it's simple. If they say, I go to the academy to acquire knowledge, they get an A. The system rewards the performance of intelligence over the actual efficiency of communication.
And that performance anxiety bleeds into everything, especially idioms. The source material highlights the absolute overuse of idioms by students trying to sound authentic.
Idioms are tricky.
A student won't just say they like someone, they will smash together every single idiom they've ever memorized into one breathless sentence.
Now, this should be good.
They will look at someone and say, you are the apple of my eye, you give me butterflies in my stomach, you take my breath away.
Which, when strung together like that, ceases to be romantic and begins to sound like a severe medical emergency.
Right. I have butterflies in my stomach and I can't breathe. Someone call an ambulance? This person is going into anaphylactic shock. It's too much.
But they are taught that idioms equal native-level fluency. The speaker even exposes a specific time-wasting strategy taught by teachers for oral exams.
Oh, to eat up the clock.
Yes.
Yeah.
If a student is asked a question they don't know the answer to, they are literally instructed to memorize massive filler sentences just to waste time.
Wow.
Instead of just saying, I don't know, they will unleash a torrent of rehearsed garbage. Like, that is a fantastic question. I have never thought about that before in my entire life. Please give me a minute to ponder this profound inquiry.
It is the absolute prioritization of form over function.
Yep.
The academic system has provided a GIF app that prepares students to pass a speaking test, to impress a panel of judges with their ability to keep producing English sounds, but it actively cripples their ability to connect with another human being in a natural setting.
And the performance pressure extends to the literal sound of their voice. The speaker talks about the immense, exhausting pressure of accents.
Accents are a huge point of anxiety. In these academic circles, you are judged harshly on whether you have committed to a pristine British accent or a flawless American accent.
You have to choose a camp.
Right, and because they aren't interacting with real people, students just end up mimicking whatever media they consume.
That makes sense.
So you have a student who watches too much sports, and they walk around the university talking like a hyperactive football commentator.
Oh my.
Or a student who watches the Disney Channel speaking this high-pitched, exaggerated musical cadence. Or, my absolute favorite, the student who watches Animal Planet and narrates their daily life like a wildlife documentary. Here we see the student approaching the cafeteria.
What is tragically lost here is the speaker's authentic voice.
Yeah, they sound like a cartoon.
They are wearing linguistic masks. They are playing a character. And the speaker also noted the absurdity of applying fake, singular emotions to every sentence, just to prove they understand the concept of intonation.
Yes. The dramatic upspeak, or the theatrical pause. The speaker notes that these students sound like they only have one emotional setting. They will deliver the sentence, "I am so happy and I am so sad," with the exact same artificial, rising, performative cadence.
It sounds like a robot trying to approximate human emotion.
Exactly.
If we synthesize this entire academic section, what we are seeing is a profound misdirection of effort. The students have mastered the mechanics of the instrument, but they have completely forgotten how to play music.
Think about this in your own life. Have you ever received an email from a colleague or a manager that was so densely packed with corporate jargon, buzzwords, and massive vocabulary that you had to read it 3 times and you still had absolutely no idea what they were actually asking you to do?
We all have.
They leveraged synergies, they operationalized paradigms, they shifted the macro-level focus, but they fundamentally failed to communicate. That is the exact same trap.
It's the T-Rex thesaurus in the workplace.
Exactly. They chose performance over clarity. They wanted to sound smart more than they wanted to be understood.
And that trap sets up the climax of our deep dive perfectly.
It really does.
Because eventually, the student has to leave the safe confines of the academy. The tests end, the grades are finalized, and they have to use this tool in reality.
Exactly. The speaker has spent years arming himself with all these complex skills. He has the vocabulary, he has the idioms, he has the accent. He has mastered the T-Rex thesaurus.
He's ready for battle.
He is. And now he steps out into the real professional world to test his ultimate JAFAP. We find the speaker working as an art director on a commercial film set.
A very stressful environment.
High-stakes, fast-paced professional environment. Time is money, and he is working with a Malaysian director.
Okay.
The speaker feels immensely confident. He is ready to unleash his advanced academic English on this set. He is ready to prove his worth.
He is preparing for a performance, not a conversation.
Exactly. The Malaysian director, who has a fairly limited, highly functional grasp of English, brings a monitor over and shows the speaker a specific shot they're setting up for the commercial. He points to the screen and waits for feedback.
Just waiting for a simple answer.
Right. The speaker takes a breath, accesses his vast academic database, and replies using his full, unbridled thesaurus arsenal.
Oh, no.
He starts talking about the intricacies of pre-production, the complexities of post-production, the nuances of focal lengths, and the desired cinematic lighting effects.
Overloading him.
He delivers a grammatically flawless, highly technical, incredibly complex paragraph of pristine English.
A masterpiece of academic rigor.
A veritable symphony of vocabulary. He finishes his monologue, proud of his eloquence, and the Malaysian director looks at him, stares blankly at his face for a second, and just says, a complete and total communication breakdown.
Total failure. The director didn't understand a single word of the performance. But here's the magic moment. This is where the entire journey resolves.
The breakthrough. A Vietnamese producer happens to be walking by the monitor. He hears the speaker's massive, complex paragraph. He sees the director's confused face.
He assesses the situation.
He quickly assesses the situation. He synthesizes all of the speaker's technical jargon, processes it, and translates it into what the speaker calls caveman English.
I love that. caveman English.
The producer looks at the director, points to the monitor, and simply says, okay, now no, do later.
Okay, now no, do later.
And the Malaysian director's face instantly lights up. He understands perfectly. He nods enthusiastically, okay, yes, and walks away to execute the plan. The communication is entirely 100% successful.
And in that singular moment, the speaker's entire linguistic worldview shatters.
It's the ultimate epiphany. The speaker realizes, standing there on that set, that all the years of education, the agonizing over British versus American accents, the memorization of massive words, the hyper-correction, it was entirely fundamentally wasted in that moment.
It was useless.
He had built a beautifully engineered, gold-plated bridge that simply did not reach the other side of the river.
This is the moment we arrive at the true ultimate JFAB, the core takeaway of this entire journey.
Break it down for us.
The speaker realizes that language is a tool for connection, not a tool for isolation. If your words are beautiful, if your grammar is flawless, if your accent is indistinguishable from a native speaker, but the human being standing right in front of you does not understand what you are saying, you have failed at language.
You failed the assignment completely. You essentially spoke into a void.
You failed the fundamental purpose of the tool. The true solution, the ultimate JFAB, isn't vocabulary. It isn't grammar. It is empathy.
Empathy.
It is the ability and the willingness to adapt your communication style, to meet the listener exactly where they are, regardless of your own educational background or your desperate desire to sound smart. The producer who walked by and said, now no, do later, demonstrated high-level linguistic empathy. He intentionally sacrificed grammar for the sake of connection. He looked at the director, recognized the director's linguistic capacity, and tailored the message to fit that exact capacity. That is true fluency.
And that is something that applies to literally everything we do. It's not just about learning a foreign language. Think about how we speak in our jobs, how we explain things to our families, how we talk to our communities.
It's universal.
If you are a doctor using complex medical jargon to a terrified patient, you might be technically medically correct, but you are failing at connection. If you are a mechanic explaining a broken transmission to someone who just wants to know if their car will start tomorrow and you refuse to simplify your language, you are failing.
Because the goal is shared understanding.
Exactly. The goal is shared understanding.
We often use complexity as a shield to protect our own egos. Stripping away that complexity to speak simply and plainly requires vulnerability.
It takes courage.
It does. It requires putting the listener's comprehension above your own desire to impress. It requires you to risk sounding a little foolish so that the other person can feel secure.
So as we wrap up this incredible journey, let's briefly look back at the path the speaker took to find this JFAB. We started with the hilariously flawed hyperlogical instance of beginners, turning bit-tut into lipstick, and logically deducing the existence of the water lemon.
The water lemon is going to stay with me for a long time.
We watched him try to cheat the system by sleeping through a one-star samurai movie, and we explored the neurobiology of hiding from ghosts by reciting ESL class introductions.
Hello, my name is...
We suffered through the agonizing forced silence of a corporate English day and laughed at the arrogance of the T-Rex thesaurus in the water release room.
A journey.
And it all led to the humbling, beautiful realization that sometimes a grammatically horrific, jagged sentence like, okay, no, do later is actually the most perfect, most effective English sentence ever spoken.
Because it achieved the one and only thing language was ever invented to do. It connected two minds.
Context is everything. The speaker actually leaves us with a great passing joke right at the end of his set. He reminds us that you shouldn't blindly apply solutions that don't make sense for the context. Like a TV show giving a visual painting as a gift to an association for the blind.
Right.
It might be a beautiful, technically perfect painting, but it's completely, utterly useless to the recipient. If you aren't thinking about the person receiving your message, the message is meaningless.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to chew on as we leave this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We spend years, sometimes decades, agonizing over the mechanical how of language. How to conjugate the irregular verb, how to perfect the dental fricative of an accent, how to memorize the advanced vocabulary list.
It's exhausting.
But we are rapidly approaching an era where artificial intelligence and real-time earpiece translators will likely remove the barriers of vocabulary and grammar entirely.
Wow, yeah. The technology will do the mechanical translation for us instantly, directly into our ears.
Precisely. So if the technology of the near future solves the mechanical JFAB of language for us, Will our current hyper-focus on perfect language learning become completely obsolete?
That's crazy to think about.
When the machine ensures that the grammar is flawless and the accent is neutralized, will it force us to finally stop worrying about how we say things and force us to actually focus on the value and the empathy of what we are saying? Will we realize that having the perfect words doesn't matter if we have nothing meaningful to say?
That is a fascinating thing to consider. If the translation is perfect, you can't hide behind bad grammar anymore, but you also can't hide behind a T-Rex thesaurus.
Nope. You're completely exposed.
You just have to have a genuine connection. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our challenge to you today is simple. Go out and connect with someone, explain something simply, drop the corporate jargon, put down the thesaurus, and remember, even if the grammar isn't perfect, the connection absolutely can be. We'll see you next time.